Welcome back to Grown Man Talks About Robot Cards for 20 minutes with the impending doom of his light potentially blowing up in his face. We're going to be going over my premium deck list that I used in BCS London. What we're going to do is going to be a little bit special in the sense that I'm going to just lay it out and show you my actual deck that I used for the day, and then just the main deck, because the G-Zone stays the same for both, more or less. But we're going to go through the main deck. And then we're gonna go. I'm essentially gonna show it to you. You have like 5 seconds to laugh, and then I'm gonna go over the actual deck with like two changes that need to be made, which I realized during the day. So let me just set it out. So we'll quickly forward to that. Okay, here it is. Here's the main deck for my premium deck. So I'll go over the glary parts. The new Goyusha reason. I'm gonna go over some reasons why I don't run what, but no, actually no. First, let's just go over the deck I actually ran, and then I'll go over the cards as we go through the actual deck. So, for new Dayusha, I kept the SVRs and Origin Rares in my standard deck. I don't feel like switching them in and out. 4 Great Dayusha, 3 True Great Dai Kaiser, 4 New Dai Dragon, 4 Grand Hogan. This is a Grand Hogan. Let me put that here. Grand Hogan. I'll explain why a bit later. 2 Miracle Dandies. I wish I ran more. I wish I had space for more, actually. I don't think I can fit in more even now. 4 Die Braves, 1 Nigman Calm, 1 Old Laurel, biggest mistake of the day, 3 New Laurel, 3 Die Mariner, 3 Draw PGs, 1 regular draw to finish off the lineup, 4 heals, 4 new heals, 4 new Justice Kobolds, 4 new Die Battles. So this is what I actually ran on the day, and now I'm going to present to you the actual deck that I wish to present and I think would actually run fairly well. One time skip and playmat change later, we're here like 4 days later I think, to talk about my actual premium build. So what you saw just now was my, well, build I used in London, which I can't even remember how much I explained to which extent, but this is the build I actually think is good. This is the one, oh yeah, forget this random hero wolf flag, it was just there for random purposes. But I think this build is actually pretty good. It's the Dimensional Robo variant, and that's why I think, you know, it might not be the best, because I think Gallops is probably the best Dimension Police premium deck right now, but this is still really good. But I did take out the Dai Kaisers just to aim for a more solid playstyle rather than something risky and kind of half-assed. So we're going to go over it and take a look together. Also, I went to the dentist not too long ago and I got my crack in my teeth fixed. So if I randomly slur my words or something, that's because half my mouth is sort of asleep. So do pardon me if that does happen, but you know, shit happens. Anyway, let's go over the grade 3s. So it's going to be pretty similar, well, similar to an extent, to what you saw earlier, but I'm only running the Dayushas. Now, why I'm doing this is because the glare is really bad. That's one reason, sorry. Maybe I'll put them like this. Let's have them like this for now. That's a nice little approach. This will be glared regardless. I tried maneuvering the lights a little bit, but it just doesn't really work out. But reason why I'm running these grade 3s is because with Dai Kaiser, I felt like there's the combo that you can do where you can ride True Great Dai Kaiser and then stride that turn, and the next turn you can Legion and then still use Great Dayusha during that turn. So I like the combo, but it's really not gonna do that much because usually you have to Legion with the old Great Dayusha, which you'd have to run as a one of, and then you can still use the new Great Dayusha during that same turn that you Legion because of the rulings that were published by Japan. So that's nice, but I felt it was kind of a gimmicky combo that doesn't really do much and takes away from the overall image of the deck. Whereas with this, I felt like with the Great Dayusha build, you have possible plays to go into. And sometimes, I think what actually did a couple times during day 2 is actually, let's say like I ride into normal Dayusha first, I set up my board, let's say I go into Die Earth or something like that. And then what actually had one game was that I rode into Great Dayusha, and then I strode into Dimax, and then I already had a front row before that. So my Dimax turn had plus 15k buffs on my front row rear guards, plus a crit on each. So I think in that sense, this Great Dayusha is good just for the ride itself sometimes, without even using the skill. So I quite like that. It has good synergy with Dimax, and you know, usually go into your Dimax at some point, so I do like it for that. So I decided to play it that way, because I think it's still a pretty nice build. Also, if people really want, like really want, I could do Gallop a Gallop deck profile for Premium, but seriously, if you really, really want, because I don't want to make it for no reason. But let's go over grade 2s. I'm going to kind of set them out as I please, I guess. See, does this even fit into the shot? It kind of does. So I don't want to put up the glare everywhere, so I'm kind of trying to maneuver around the glare, I guess. So we're running 4 Die Dragons, 3 Grand Hogans, and 3 Dandies. So no, 4 Dandies rather. I only ran 2 Dandies during day 2, and I realized that I really want this card because it's a really good meta call right now. So Dandy gets plus 10k shield if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, which means that when you're guarding against Ichitom, or well, against Ichikishima herself, you can actually guard with him, because he's a 15k shield as a grade 2, Ichikishima only blocks G-Guardians in grade 0s, meaning that this is just perfect because it's a trigger worth of power in defense as a grade 2. So I think, for now, while Ichikishima is like really prevalent, I think this is going to be good as a 4-of. I was playing 2 before, but I really like it as a 4-of now. 3 Grand Hogans. You can easily, instead of Grand Hogan, play Die Ballast if you want to keep the Dimensional Robo name, but in this build it's not that necessary, so I prefer the Grand Hogan because your main stride is the X Gallop regardless, so you're going to get his skill off, usually actually, as long as you're striding, and if not, you can just, call him as a vanilla, but, you don't really want to be doing that too much. And then the Die Dragon is a very simple staple. He's searchable with Die Earth, which is really nice, and on top of that, he's a 20k beater. He puts up your power by 5k to hit you the thresholds for stuff like X Gallop and whatnot. So I think he's just really nice for those reasons, and that's why I like him quite a lot. Also on the Dimax turn, this is pretty scary because if you do the thing, even without Great Daisha, this is going to be a 25k attacker on his own with a crit, so that's quite nice. If you do the Great Daisha in the same turn, it's 35. So these are the grade 2s, and let's see how much of my glare we can maneuver around to, prevent everything else. So next up we go into the grade 1s. 2 Die... Ooh, that's the highlight of the glare. Let's go like this. 2 Die Mariners. 2 because he's a lot more prevalent in Standard, where card advantage is so important, and, just making your opponent use up 1 more card actually means a lot. In Premium he's still good, because you can drop this on a turn, on a Stark turn, on an X Gallop turn, and it's going to be quite good for that. But there are times when with X Gallop they might take the first attack, for example, and then guard the next one, so then it's not as important. But it's nice that with X Gallop and Stark it stays for every battle, so that's the nice part about it. So you could play more if you want to, but I didn't, just because I wanted to play my other grade 1s instead. But if you want to debate about it in the comments, I'm open to doing that as well. However, the next one is a 4-of that I think is the MVP of the deck for grade 1s, and that's the new Commander Laurel. None of the old one. The old one is terrible. Like, let me tell you, every time I drew the old one during day 2, I wished I drew the new one, because, like, the old one doesn't do anything right now, because Protect stops it, every PG stops it, everything stops it, the new trigger powers stop it, basically everything stopped the old Laurel. And, the older Laurel was really good during the era where perfect guards were only for the Vanguard, so they couldn't guard the rear guards. So that's when old Laurel was really good. But right now, it's just not needed. So this is much better. And like every time I drew old Laurel during day 2, I wish it was a new one. So this one is amazing. You can combo this with X Gallop, and then you're gonna be able to do first stride re-stand with a crit. First stride, that didn't used to happen before, so that's really important. And then also with Stark, you can do the combo, which actually won me a couple games, of just this plus Stark, which is like 300k swings with a crit. Like, that is actually scary. So I think it's just important to play 4 of this Laurel because it just combos so well with what your deck wants to do. Then another one of our Power Edition cards, which in Die Brave. So this is the, Soulbots 1 plus 5k, and if your Vanguard hits the opponent's Vanguard, you can get yourself an extra card in hand by putting him into the Soul, and then, you sacrifice him from the Soul for other effects, like himself and Die Dragon, and also our one of Enigma and Calm. You go into X Gallop quite a lot in this deck, so I think you can get off Enigma and Calm quite often, because he is your returning Perfect Guard, but you have to have a Burst Vanguard to actually get him back, so that's what the X Gallop is there for. And then our last grade 1 is the 3 Stride Fodders. This is in place of the Die Kaisers that I was playing, because I felt like the Stride Fodders are a bit more revolutionary, I guess, or no, not revolutionary, multi-use, let's say. So I feel like the Strike Fodders are a good pick. You don't get to do any kind of searching in this deck, but you would in Gallop if you want to for whatever reason. So I think that could enable in Gallop to play like one of Bravest Rush, for example, because you can search it. So I kind of like this lineup in terms of grade 1s. So I think 3 Strike Fodders is okay, because you already have a few grade 3s that you can run around with, and then you know, you're playing a fair number, like you have a very standard list of grades actually. I feel like I'm playing a lot of, actually I'm playing the standard number of grade 1s too. It was earlier that I was playing a lot and then I put in more grade 2s, so there's that. Then in terms of triggers, we're running 3 of the perfect draws and then 1 regular draw trigger, because I really don't want to see the old triggers in this deck right now, because I think it just needs the new triggers to compensate in the lack of power in other ways. So I think I really wanted to play just the new triggers, so you'll notice that the rest is just 8 heals, and then, I mean 4 heals rather, and 8 crits. So that's, you know, very much your standard trigger lineup. I'm not running the stands. I tested the stands quite a lot actually, and I like both Reika and Linka, but I think I like Reika a bit more. But then it was just annoying because stands don't have any synergy right now really outside of the Laurel. But even then, sometimes you're calling stuff for Laurel that you don't want to stand anyway, because it's like, you know, it's like a grade 1 in the front row that like you just had to call down to use Laurel. So I think for that reason, it's like, I didn't really need the stands, and then checking them was disappointing because it was 5k less power, and usually I get cucked by a defensive trigger and that would be the end of it. So I really prefer running full-on new triggers, because that means that, for example, if you go into X Gallop, and then, oh yeah, we should have our starter here, obviously. And I should explain this too, but if you run into the new X Gallop, and for example, you don't have Die Dragon or Die Brave to put up his power to 43k, because when you ride a grade 3 and then put up a force, you're 38 base on a stride, so you need an extra 5k to actually pump yourself up to 43, and then double it with Laurel to get the actual first stride restand. So if you don't have it, I feel like you can bet on the new triggers. So for example, like if you're on 38, you'll double yourself to 76, and sure, like that's the standard trigger will still get you through, but if you're playing against a clan that doesn't have V-Series support, you're hitting magic numbers anyway, and the plus 10k will help you even more. So against decks like Anje or Luard, I think that's pretty important right now. So I like to play the new triggers, but obviously if you prefer to play the old ones, I understand that too. I think it's more the Gallop deck that plays some of the older triggers, but in this one I just think it's better to play the new ones. And then finally, my starter choice is the new Goyusha. Now the reason why is because I tested the old Goyusha a lot. Like, trust me, I tested it so much, but the problem with the old Goyusha is that you have to have 4 Dimensional Robo named cards in your hand by turn 2. And the problem with that is that we're running a lot of stuff that isn't Dimensional Robo. This, you know, and like a bunch of triggers. So I felt like if I wanted to run old Goyusha, I had to make a lot of subpar decisions for my deck build, in the sense that like I couldn't run Stride Fighters maybe, or like I'd have to be, you know, shaky about Laurel even, or like I couldn't run Dandies, I couldn't run some of these triggers if I wanted to pull off old Goyusha consistently. And old Goyusha is only really good when you're going first, because going second, it's not worth the neg that you're making to do him. So I think it just wasn't really worth it, because you're only going second so many times. Going first so many times. So I prefer the new Goyusha because he can help you out of being great stuck. He gives you an extra card in hand. It's just a lot more useful. The fact that he stays in Soul is good too. That's why we were playing the Lego Boy in Gallop at the end of G. So I think he's fine to stay as it is as well. So I think it's quite alright, and he's a good starter himself. So this is the main deck. Now let's get into the G Zone. Alright, so getting into the G Zone, we're going to go over these strides first, of course. So I'm going to begin with the 4X Gallops. Before I used to run 3, I think 4 is quite good right now because he's just a super good strike target. I actually ran 3 in day 2 of BCS London, but I decided that 4 is good because I had to take out Daikaiser Leons. I used to run Daikaiser Leon instead, and I had 1 less G-Guard and 1 less of this, but I never went for the Daikaiser Leon during the tournament, so I felt like it's fine to play 4, but you can take him out for something else if you want to, because usually games won't last that long for you to go into all 4, but it's just nice to have as a safety net because of the new Laurel. I feel like this card is just insane, because you get yourself an 80k plus attack with 4 drive checks and a crit with Laurel, right? And then you can restand it, and even though you're attacking with no drive checks, you've still got the crit pressure, so your opponent will want to guard it usually, unless they really want that extra damage for, you know, their plays or something. And then we're running 2 Dimaxes, obviously 2 because we need 1 to flip him up for the actual cost. So Dimax is genuinely a really nice card. I still really like him. I'd maybe even take out a Gallop and something else to play 2 more copies, just because there were times during the tournament that I really did want to go for a second copy, or for a second, you know, Dimax turn, but I really like him just because he is this big beast that puts up crits on your rear guards and therefore puts on a lot of pressure for your opponent, and how you can kind of manipulate their guarding and things like that. So I feel like it helps you survive some matchups as well. And right now we don't have a lot of decks that can retire your stuff, or like Link Joker isn't that big right now either. So I feel like you can freely use him, so I think it's easy to put him up to 4 of as well. Then we're running the 2 Diarists. 2 because you don't want to see him any more times than that. During day 2 I got the crit skill off once because I first showed X Tiger for whatever reason. He's good because you can search your Die Dragon, which is like the only grade 2 target, and you can search out your regular Dayusha because you still have 13k rear guard that is nice to have and, you know, use on later on because the opponent usually doesn't hit him for whatever reason. Then I'm running as one ofs, 1 X Tiger. I use this like once or twice when my opponent, like it's one of those kind of like Gizek calls where when your opponent doesn't give you any counterblast, all you can really use is this Dimax, and that's actually about it. So that's why I was thinking of maybe putting up another 2 copies of Dimax, because that's like your only ways to work around Gizek, which gives you no counterblast to play with. So I think that was a bit of a problem. Then I'm running 1 GB8 because the GB8 is good. We have a pretty good one in DP, you just have to have a good setup on the field. And then I dropped a card, but 1 Stark, because Stark is amazing in this deck. You can double his power together with the new Laurel, give him a crit, and then all 3 attacks will have a crit on them. It's pretty ridiculous. Then in terms of G-Guards, I'm playing 1 Dismal. Thank you to Rava for getting me the Comic Fiesta copy. Well, Dismal normally is going to be your flip fodder, but there are some times when your opponent doesn't want to give you counterblast, so they're bullying your rears, so then you just kind of drop this on a rear that you want to protect, like the Die Dragon, for example. So I like it for that. It doesn't see much play, but it's still nice regardless. MVP G-Guard, well, one of them is the GO5. It's a big buff shield. It's basically a 30k shield most of the time, and I like it a lot for that. We don't have any more units left that have less than 5k power, so we're good. We can always use a skill. Very nice. 1 Zeal, if the meta becomes more multi-attack centered, because Aquaforce has been topping here and there, this can go up to 2. But problem is that with Giza, you're not going to be able to get the counterblast part of the skill off very often, so that's not too good. And then 1 Atlantis Dolphin. This was the MVP. He only works on your opponent's Vanguard's attack to your Vanguard, so it's very restrictive in when you can use him. But the good thing about this card is that during the during the Cosmic Hero Grand Gallop era, he wasn't that good because you usually didn't have a full field, or like he didn't have even like 3 rear guards or something, so you couldn't use his skill to the full extent. But I feel like in this build you usually have a full field most of the time, so you can get the really big buff shield out of this, and I like it a lot for that. Plus the Soul Charge and Counter Charge are both really important, so I like him a lot for that. And then 1 X Caribou. Almost never use him. I usually flip him up for Atlantis Dolphin, but he's SP and that's nice, but sadly the new trigger powers make him kind of obsolete because he's a 25k Guardian, potentially 29, instead of, you know, just dropping your heals for 20k. So he's not really that worth with the new triggers, but he's still a nice card to play, but mostly use as a flip fodder for Atlantis Dolphins. So this is the deck. Also, I guess I should mention that you can also double X Tiger's power, which is kind of nice. So usually people like just PG him, but then, you know, also with forces and stuff, you can actually first try this and get the crit. So that's kind of nice. But outside of that, you know, there's not that much else to talk about. It's like you got strides that work well with the Laurel, you got strides that give you extra advantages, you got strides that work well with Great Dayusha, and then you have, you know, good standalone strides as well. So that's what the G-Zone looks like. So I hope you guys liked this deck profile. If you really want Gallop, I can make it, but not very soon, I guess, maybe in a week or 2, because I have a lot of other content that I'm prioritizing for now, but I did want to get this out because a lot of people asked for it, so there's that. So on that note, that's going to be it for me today. Don't forget to check out the second channel, as well as click the bell button, and check out the social medias in the description, and join the Discord channel if you haven't already. But on that note, that's going to be it for me today, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.